What is Putra 35 and how does it affect Malaysia's economy? How will Putra 35 drive growth across sectors in Malaysia? What role will Putra 35 play in driving the future of Malaysia's business landscape? I'm Muhammad Hamdan and this is Money Matters. Hello there, good evening and welcome to your favorite channel TV3, where you can also stream on Tonton. Now today we have TERAJU's Chief Executive Officer Junady Nawawi with me right here in the studio. Welcome to Money Matters, Junady.
Thank you for having us, Mohammed.
Thanks for taking the time to be with us. Now, today's discussion will largely focus on the new Bumiputera Economic Transformation Plan 2035, which was announced by Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim in August. How does Putra 35 align with Malaysia's broader economic development goals, and what are the anticipated impacts on key sectors of the economy?
All right, thank you for that. As you had mentioned, the Putra 35 was launched or diluncurkan on the 19th of August, recent last month. And let me take the journey back about a year before that. We're in the middle of last year, in July 2023, where the Madani Economy Framework was actually launched by Amat Bermuat Prime Minister. And that sets out the way forward for the economic development of Malaysia as a whole. Right? And there are goals set out in there, which mainly revolving around equitable redistribution of wealth and income, and also social justice, governance in particular, right, and sustainability above all. So fast forward a year later, we've come to the development of the Bumiputera Economic Transformation Roadmap, Bumiputera Economic Transformation Plan, which the journey has started again towards the end of last year as well. And culminating in the launch of the book, Putra 35. Right. But it's a longer-term approach that we are having this time. And what I can say to your question is that it's not about bringing up the Bumiputera economy in exclusion, but it's about bringing up the Bumiputera as an economy to become a significant contributor to the economic growth of Malaysia as a whole moving forward under the Madani Economy Framework.
Right, and talking about implementation and execution of initiatives such as Phase 1, how does the implementation of Putra 35 benefit the broader Malaysian population, as you mentioned earlier, including all Malaysians across all ethnic groups in the country in terms of economic growth and also opportunities?
Right, now if we look at it from the perspective of the Bumiputera community as being the largest, right, the majority
of the population
of Malaysia. So it is imperative that we have to propel the development of that majority in order to contribute more towards economic development of the country as a whole. So we are looking at all aspects of economics in terms of multipliers, right, and interventions that we need to undertake from a government standpoint in order to propel them further. So, like I said, it all goes back to the basic economic tenet of equitable distribution of income and wealth, whether it's between Bumiputera and non-Bumiputera, and also within the Bumiputera population itself, to ensure that there is equitable distribution of wealth and income, and opportunities for that matter. So that's what we need to ensure going forward over the course of the next 10 years. And this is being spearheaded by Putra 35, the plan.
You spoke a little bit about the role of private sector in this initiative. What role will the private sector play in the successful implementation of Putra 35, and how will public-private partnerships be leveraged?
Okay, looking ahead the next 10 years, we foresee and we anticipate a much greater involvement of the private sector when it comes to economic development. And therefore the development of the Bumiputera economy as well. I think the past easily past 40 years, it has been very much government-driven and government-led. So we're trying to reposition that such that the government's still there to provide the, how should I say, the impetus and the incentives, right, in terms of development expenditure allocations, perhaps some tax benefits or incentives, and equally as important are the non-financial facilitation that could help, right? But therefrom, what we would like to see is the private sector making the most of that opportunity and window that's being provided so that they can push further the development. And along the way, there will be stock takes that we need to undertake, right? When it comes to achievements, whether is this model working or not, to answer such a simple question, right? And if it's not, then perhaps government needs to consider some of the forms of incentives to draw further private capital or private funding that we need to bring into the ecosystem. Because it's not about government involvement or government allocation, government funding alone.
It's not sustainable for the long term.
It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. So we have designed it in such a way that the mechanics of the implementation of Putra 35 will be sustainable. And the products and services that underpin the action plans under Putra 35 will also be something that is circulating in nature. Right? So it's not about exhausting the allocation for this year and next year we have to find some other way of raising funds. So we want to make it as, should I say, circulating and sustainable as possible.
But that's how do we attract these, private companies to jump onto the bandwagon, really, to help the government to make sure that this, the success of the implementation of Putra 35, basically?
Yeah, this is where we have to think as a country, as a nation. Right? So it's not about pure returns on investment. Of course, from a business standpoint, you won't get into it if you're not about to make any profit from it.
Sure,
right?
nothing is free.
Yeah, but at the same time, having benefited from the infrastructure that has been provided by the government all this while, and this is where we believe that if we can mobilize more private sector participation in terms of driving or paving the way for new economic sectors or subsectors or new segments within existing economic sectors, right? Rather than coming from a government standpoint. Again, when we talk about doing the planning, we have roundtable sessions, we do surveys and questionnaires and all kinds of feedback searches to be able to identify what are the new segments out there in the economy, right? So, hey, why not players from the commercial and private sector who are already there on the ground
contribute their input,
right? Come and tell us, for example, which is how and why agencies such as TERAJU exist, because we are being the interface between the government, the bigger government, and the players on the ground. So we are here to connect and to hear and to facilitate, as you said.
Now, I want to touch on some of the emerging market sectors like renewable energy and also digital finance, and what do they mean to Putra 35. But hold that thought, because we're going to go for a quick break right now, and we will continue the discussion when we come back. We're taking a short break, so don't go away, because Money Matters will be back shortly. Welcome back. TERAJU's Chief Executive Officer, Junady Nawawi, is with us in the studio right now. Now, Junady, how does Putra 35 address emerging market sectors like renewable energy and also digital finance, which are important as Malaysia targets a 31% renewable energy mix by 2025, which is next year, while digital economy projection of slightly over a quarter of Malaysia's GDP also by 2025. And how will these sectors enhance Bumiputera and national economic progress?
Right. Renewable energy and digital economy have been identified as two of the leading sectors in the next 10 years. That's the new economic space for the Bumiputera to actually be able to penetrate, because it's still a green field across the board, not just in the region, but I think globally. Of course, there are head starters, there are players already there, but it's a segment that continues to evolve. And in its evolution, it provides new windows of opportunities for anyone, for that matter, particularly Bumiputera in the context of Malaysia, to be able to penetrate. And this is where we identified these are two amongst them. There are others, of course. And I would say that in terms of the entry cost is relatively low compared to sectors that require heavy capex, for example, in traditional and brick-mortar businesses. So these are new areas which can easily be penetrated by Bumiputera. Renewable energy may require a bit more infrastructural intervention, right? But again, it is something that no party or group of parties that has dominated the scene yet.
Right.
So that's how
it's
we see.
relatively still a level playing field.
Yes, correct, exactly. It's still a level playing field. Right. But there are many segments within renewable energy that we have to continuously to identify. Like maybe in the past 3, 4, 5 years, it will have been solar energy, right? But I think perhaps solar energy has reached a certain point of, not say saturation, but plateaued in terms of the growth, right? In terms of the returns that can be generated. So we got to look at other areas now. Maritime, we do not know. That's another area that's being looked at as a source of energy, right? Hydro. And we are a nation that is surrounded by water. And we are blessed with the natural resources that we have. So there are other sources of energy that we are looking into. And at the agency level, for example, if I can quote what we are doing at TERAJU, we are working closely with local institutions of higher learning.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of research that has been undertaken by the institutions, which has yet to be unearthed in terms of its commercial viability.
Right.
So this is where we are in close discussion with institutions. And when we know we are ready, then we will open up for Bumiputera players to come in and take part. Right?
And also, all this would not mean much without talent development. How does Putra 35 plan to address talent development and skills training to prepare the Bumiputera community for future economic opportunities, such as, these emerging market sectors that we just talked about?
Definitely. Talent development is key, amongst the fundamentals that we have to work on. Because what we need to focus on is, one, from an employment standpoint, is the employability of Bumiputera graduates, right? And another is the development in terms of not limited to entrepreneurial abilities, but corporate management abilities of the Bumiputera population. So these are the areas that we have to continuously look at, not to say that Bumiputera is lacking any of those areas, right? The majority of professionals are Bumiputera. We have statistics to show that. Right? But it's just to ensure that this baseline is continuously worked on so that it either expands or at the very least it stays on the average. It represents the average that is equitable and reflective of the economic development of the country as a whole. So that's what we have to look at. And talent development, if I may quote, is being looked at by our sister agency under Ministry of Economy, which is Yayasan Peneraju. So they're tasked with developing the talent pool for Bumiputera and towards employment in the corporate sector or to populate the commercial and private sector that's been populated by Bumiputera SMEs. Because there is a bit of a talent gap that we see. Right? And this is where we want to encourage Bumiputera SMEs to hire more Bumiputera professionals.
That's actually very interesting. But very quickly before we go for another break, how will Putra 35 build on past initiatives and successes in Bumiputera economic development, and what lessons have been learned so far?
Right, I believe that Putra 35 carries on from all the economic plans that have been put in place in the country. Right.
It's not something that is entirely new.
It's not
a continuation.
It's a continuation.
Right.
It's a continuation of previous economic plans. But what we emphasize on is the execution and implementation, and also the governance aspect. Because what we want to minimize is the pilferage or the leakage, right? Ketirisan in the bahasa Malaysia context. And want to ensure that whatever resource that's put into it, whether it's financial or non-financial, achieves maximum output and therefore multiplied outcome. And that would be the key, which is, let's say, for example, we at TERAJU also, we are looking at new ways of doing things, right? How to leverage on the commercial sector. Now we announced our own little dana, and in collaboration with bank collaborating partners, which we can talk about a little bit about that as well, right? And we are on course to open up for applications and submissions by interested parties or applicants. Right? So that's one simple example. And whilst previously, again, we've very much been focused on, how should I say, economic or commercial or financial aspects when it comes to drawing up an economic plan. But Putra 35 also extends to the social aspects as well.
Okay.
So here we're talking about the philosophy behind the empowerment of the Bumiputera, for example. So there's elements of that in Putra 35 in the document, right? And how by exercising that philosophy, we will ensure that we stay on the right path and not digress.
Right.
Say the least.
Mechanisms that are to be put in place to monitor the implementation of Putra 35. We'll talk a little bit about that after we go for another quick break.
Sure.
So hold that thought for now.
Sure.
We're taking another short break, so don't go away, because Money Matters will be back shortly. Thanks for staying with us. We're speaking with the Chief Executive Officer of TERAJU, Junady Nawawi. Now, Junady, what are the mechanisms? I mean, what mechanisms are to be put in place for monitoring Putra 35's implementation? What kind of metrics or indicators are we looking at here that are used to measure the success of Putra 35? And how will progress be tracked over the course of the initiative? It's a 10-year plan.
Well, yes, it's a 10-year plan, and we at TERAJU, we have been tasked with being the secretariat jointly with Kementerian Economy, our supervising ministry. Right. And TERAJU, we function as a secretariat to the Majlis Ekonomi Bumiputera, which is chaired by the Yang Amat Berhormat Perdana Menteri himself. And it consists of the Deputy Prime Minister, the Ministry of Economy, Minister of Finance, Minister of International Trade and Investment, amongst others, and a few other key ministers that make up the Majlis Ekonomi Bumiputera. Right. And in terms of the governance structure, the Majlis itself is supported by the Jawatan Kuasa Pemandu, which is chaired by Yang Amat Berhormat Timbalan Perdana Menteri, and the Jawatan Kuasa Kerja, which is chaired by Yang Berhormat Menteri Ekonomi. And we, in the course of finalising the design of a dashboard for monitoring. Now, this dashboard will be the main tool that we use for monitoring the progress of the action plans and activities and the programs that will be implemented under Putra 35. And the monitoring aspect will be across the board, where we will disseminate the reporting template and the dashboard mechanisms to all the relevant ministries and agencies, right? Not in a way to, how should I say, to enforce or as a watchdog or as a checker, but in a more on a collaborative manner, as a collaborative approach, right, with fellow agencies and also private sector as well, to ensure that the targets are met year on year. And we will have frequent meetings at all the jawatankuasa levels, right? Jawatankuasa kerja, jawatankuasa pemandu, or the majlis itself, which will sit at the frequency of, on average, probably once a quarter. And there probably will be one at the end of this year, just to take stock of where we are, having launched the Putra 35. So that will be the mechanics for the monitoring and how it will be undertaken. And of course, TERAJU will be the one driving it alongside Kementerian Economy.
Junady, it doesn't sound like an easy feat, right? I'm sure there are a lot of challenges along the way. And what are the anticipated challenges in achieving the goals of Putra 35? And how does the plan address these challenges to ensure effective implementation of the initiative?
The challenge is huge, yes, right? And there are about 132 initiatives that we got to look at. And from there, it could be broken down into further initiatives or sub-activities. So it could be a lot that, at least on paper, to be able to have to monitor. But this is where it takes the whole community to work together.
Sure.
All the elements in the ecosystem to work together. It's not just about, in the past perhaps, it's always been seen as if one agency is the sole driver and everyone goes along into the wave. But here we are trying to do it differently, in the sense that everyone has got its equal share of responsibility and targets to either to drive or to be met on their own. So it remains a challenge, which is why the tracking and monitoring mechanism will be important, and which we have to do quarterly basis. Internally at agency level, it will be more on a monthly basis, and the reporting upwards, will be on a quarterly basis, inshallah. Right, so, and we have to do that, and perhaps 2 years down the line, most likely there will be a midterm review that we need to do, because by which time it will be at the onset of the 13th Malaysia Plan. So we have to revisit the Putra 35 vis-a-vis the implementation of the 13th Malaysia Plan.
What about global trends? How does Putra 35 address global economic trends? And what strategies will be put in place to ensure its relevance on the international stage?
Okay, that's a very relevant question, because here we are 2 years after COVID, right, roughly. And when COVID first hit in 2020 and lasted until 2021 at least, right, nobody knew how the economy was going to recover. So the last 2 years, 2022 and 2023, and of course 2024 so far, has enabled us to observe and see how the economy has picked up. And I have to say that in the past year in particular, there has been a surge in economic activity across all economic sectors. Right. So that is one, outcome that can be taken from a positive angle that has come out of the pandemic. Right. And this is where, as a lesson learned also, because nobody anticipated it.
Sure.
Right. And as recently as 2022, I would say that the economic activities were still pretty flat, if I can use that word.
Sluggish.
Sluggish. 2023 was when we started to see the pickup. And there's a greater surge having taken place in 2024. So these are the elements on a global scale.
Which is also reflected in the GDP growth of the country.
Yes.
Right.
And capital market activities. The Bursa Malaysia, for example. We have seen quite a few IPOs announced. So that is a reflection of how our financial markets went and how it extends to the economy as a whole. It has picked up. So these are strong indicators of the potential that lies ahead for Malaysia as a nation. Right? And we have seen our ringgit also strengthen in general. Right? So these are the elements that we still need to continue to be, conscious of as we progress as a nation, leading towards becoming amongst the leading economies of Asia. That is the vision that we have.
tiger of Asia.
Yes.
Junady Nawawi, Chief Executive Officer of TERAJU, thank you once again for taking the time to be with us on this episode of Money Matters.
Thank you so much for having us.
We really appreciate your insights shared throughout the program. Thank you. Now, for the past half an hour, you've been with us here on Money Matters. If you missed the earlier part of this episode, you can also catch it up on Tonton. I'm Muhammad Hamdan. Thank you for watching and have a great weekend.